Welcome to MoneyWeb Midday, the actuality news show, offering unique insights and in-depth analysis featuring South Africa's top business leaders, newsmakers, and analysts for today's professionals. Your host, Jeremy Maggs.
Thank you for listening to MoneyWeb at Midday. In the next 30 minutes, I'll put some context around the numbers, perspective around the politics, and some clarity around the choices facing us in South Africa. Welcome, I'm Jeremy Maggs. Coming up on the program today, why backups aren't enough and how downtime is quietly draining business revenue and trust. It's Monday, the 26th of January.
MoneyWeb at Midday, for all your up-to-date stories.
Now, most companies think they are protected because they have backups. According to cloud and disaster recovery specialists, that confidence, though, is dangerously misplaced at times. With downtime now hitting every business, outages costing South African companies hundreds of millions of rands, the argument is that backups recover data, not the business itself. Well, joining us now is Mandi Matthews, Solutions Architect for Azure at Braintree. It's a specialized provider of Microsoft Azure solutions, focusing on cloud migration, AI integration, and managed services in South Africa. Mandi, a very warm welcome to you. I want to start with the headline claim, backups aren't enough. I would say to you that most executives, in fact, believe they are covered. What exactly are they misunderstanding here?
There's a big difference between backups and disaster recovery. A typical example of a backup is a point-in-time snapshot of your services, right? And you can only return to that point at any given time. Whereas disaster recovery is a near instant restore for your services, more of an active scenario.
You say that 100% of companies, and I hope I've got this figure right, report revenue loss from downtime in 25% or in 2025. In other words, all companies. Mandi, that's a striking number. Is this poor planning? Is it bad technology? Or, as we're probably going to talk about it in a moment or two, leadership complacency?
I think that is more in line with the Cybersecurity Directive and Joint Standard 1 of 2023, where businesses have to declare any losses, any revenue losses. And we've seen that a chunk of those revenue losses come from compromised systems or, let's say, a malicious act on their infrastructure. So that is in line with regulatory pressure where companies have to disclose that. And sifting through the reasons of the declaration, we've picked up that cybersecurity is basically one of the most prominent issues in that space.
And that means what? The implementation of poor technology or just poor planning?
A bit of both, right? Some businesses don't have a BCDR strategy, a business continuity and disaster recovery strategy, none whatsoever. And unfortunately, we've seen customers where they've learned the hard way. They get compromised. In actual fact, let me backtrack a bit. So what typically happens is that we would sit down with a customer and be like, Mr. X, we think you require a disaster recovery strategy. And then they'll come to us and say, financial constraints don't allow me to do this at this point in time, whatever the reason. And then 2 months down the line, they get hit by a malicious act, right? And then they realize that they should have actually gone for the service. Now they're paying a bit more, and there's a chunk of their revenue that's gone because they couldn't or did not implement any disaster recovery, or even the smallest thing, the backups, right? And then now they're facing a bigger chunk of money in their loss of money in their revenue.
The problem, though, is almost psychological. I'd suggest to you that many firms still treat disaster recovery as a grudge purchase. And there is a point, if I'm hearing you correctly, where that mindset becomes reckless rather than cost conscious.
Absolutely. Most businesses see business continuity, disaster recovery as a luxury. And in actual fact, it is not. It is not a luxury. And it is not an IT glitch, right? It's a financial risk that they need to live with. Hence, we are we are lobbying out there quite heavily in terms of educating our customers and the masses out there that it is not a downtime is equals financial risk, essentially. Looking at the numbers here, 2024, South African breach costs were like 53 million. And then in 2025, it was 44 million. And the worst case was 350 million. That's a whopping amount of revenue loss. And it's high time they started taking that seriously.
The problem, and I think you've alluded to this already, is that often compliance comes up as the trigger for disaster recovery investment. Do you think companies are doing it because they understand the risk, or, as you're also intimating, regulators are simply forcing their hand?
I'll tell you a bit of both, right? It is a bit of both in my opinion and in my experience. But there are challenges, right? The initial implementation requires proper planning. And you find that some businesses don't have proper planning in place, don't have the financial capacity for one, and thus they don't have it. But I mean, if you look at it in depth, there's more ways to do. DR is not just backup or a failover. It's just resilience in total. So I think the goal here is for us to educate as many people as possible that there is a way around, the financial implications, or if it's regulatory pressure that's coming through, then, it makes it a little bit easier for those businesses to adopt it because they don't have any other choice.
So you're convincing me that disaster recovery is strategic, it's not technical. So within an organization, who owns it? Is it the CIO? Is it the risk committee? Or is this something that sits on the desk of the chief executive?
To be honest, the entire business owns it. It has to trickle down from the executive level, filters down to compliance, and then carries on to IT, where the actual work gets done. But, creating a BCDR plan requires the entire organization to be aligned. So it has to trickle upwards, from up downwards.
Thank you very much indeed. South African companies have certainly been warned in that respect. Mandi Matthews, Solutions Architect for Azure at Braintree. Appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining us.